Mr. Vice President, I believe that incisive, skillful, and prudent management of not only the economy, but of all social institutions are essential in the many national and global vagaries and challenges, including the pestilence of COVID-19, to cope with balance of payments problems, unstable economy, low or negative economic growth, debt servicing requirements, social dislocation and disruption. The bright and the best does not reside in one group, but in all of us. Keeping the interest and well-being of all our citizens in focus, we owe it ourselves to do the absolute best we can. Satisficing by itself is not good enough in the long term. Mr. Vice President, I thank you.
Minister of Energy and Energy Industries.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vice President. Mr. Vice President, it's always a great privilege to be able to be afforded the opportunity to join a debate in this House, somewhere I started back in 2014. Mr. Vice President, I've come here today, I've listened to the previous speaker and her contribution towards the energy sector previously, but I have come here today to give an account to the people of Trinidad and Tobago as to what is taking place with the energy sector in Trinidad and Tobago, and in fact globally. So I begin. First of all, I'd like to take this opportunity to just pay my respects to the late Minister Franklin Khan, who was the former Minister of Energy, and his untimely passing earlier this year that propelled me to be assigned this portfolio. Mr. Vice President, I think it is timely, especially having listened to the last speaker, to put some context on the energy sector. The global energy sector, as the former speaker rightly said, is going through a transition. That is a reality that we're facing, but it needs to be understood that this is a global phenomenon. We've seen changes taking place very rapidly in the global energy sector, as the world and developed nations are pressured to move away from fossil fuels. We've seen an increase in reliance on renewables, in particular on wind and solar renewable energy. We've seen declarations of desires to use greener, cleaner energy. In fact, in a couple weeks' time, our Honorable Prime Minister will lead a delegation from Trinidad and Tobago to COP26, which is a gathering of global leaders to discuss climate change, and there will be effects of these discussions and decisions taken, some already that have been taken, on the global energy sector. However, there are persons who would have Trinidad and Tobago believe that the end of the energy sector as we know it is near. As Madam President returns, I'd like to simply say that this is in fact not so. Don't let the Chicken Little syndrome that is taking place in some quarters, that the energy sector is suddenly going to vanish from the globe, frighten anyone, and in particular us here in Trinidad and Tobago. The current fossil fuels used are coal, oil, and gas. The first one that is contributing to the global energy warming crisis is coal. And that's the first one that the global energy sector and the developed countries are moving away from. Oil and gas have a much longer horizon. The horizon for oil may be more limited, as I'll discuss, than that for gas. I, as the Minister of Energy and Energy Industries, have told our sector that we will push our oil production in Trinidad and Tobago with a horizon of 2028 to 2030. So we recognize that there may be a limited shelf life for oil production globally. But we are, however, in the meantime, I hope the former speaker is listening, we are focused on increasing our oil production. As I heard her say, oil in the ground, gas in the ground is of no value. You have to monetize it. And the way we go about increasing our oil production, Madam President, is Heritage, our state-owned company, have been mandated to take certain tracts to be able to increase their oil production. I've also been utilizing farm outs, an increased amount of farm outs and lease outs. In fact, since being the Minister of Energy and Energy Industries, in fact, this morning I signed another lease out, and there are a number of increased farm outs and lease outs to give persons the opportunity, especially at this time when oil prices are very high globally, for persons to get in the ground and pull up our resources, our liquid resources. We are also seeking other interested parties. I'm happy to report to the country that we had the foresight to allow EOG and Heritage to enter into a recent joint venture where they can expect in the next couple of years to increase significantly the oil production in Trinidad and Tobago out of Heritage's fields. BHP has also had some recent success. Madam President, it's accepted that gas is the transition fuel. I have personally participated in the past few weeks and months in a number of global panel discussions, some with other energy ministers, environmentalists, those who are pushing renewables, those who are focused on the energy sector globally. And it is the conclusion of all that the transition energy source is going to be gas. And that is fortunate for Trinidad and Tobago, and that we had the foresight a couple of decades ago to move really to gas production in Trinidad and Tobago, and it's generally accepted, Madam President, that this will be the position and gas will be the transition energy commodity until at least 2050. That's the horizon we're looking at. What we've seen happen recently in Europe within the past few weeks, the world must look on at that. There was this thrust towards the use of renewables. In particular, these are countries where their oil and gas resources are not abundant or they don't have at all, so they use solar and they use wind. Look at what happened in UK very, very recently in the past couple of weeks. Wind stopped. There was a slowdown in wind patterns and it collapsed their whole energy production and electricity production. There then became a shortage of gas supply in Europe and they went into a semi-crisis. This has shot gas prices up globally, and that is a warning that whilst we move away from the fossil fuels, as we should, there's a transition that needs to take place. So right now you're seeing, for the first time in many decades, extremely high gas prices. It's led to a number of consequences in Europe and those countries who had moved towards more reliance on renewables. And it's fall back. I was reading an article this weekend. They had to restart coal production electricity in the United Kingdom, something they've moved away from. They actually had a couple coal plants that they were moving towards getting rid of, but they had them on standby due to this gas shortage and the reliance on renewables that did not come through. Immediately, they had to restart this coal to ensure as they go into their winter months, there is electricity being produced for heating and other manufacturing and production. We saw queues. We saw the Prime Minister in the United Kingdom having to call out the army to drive tankers to get oil to gas stations. So let us not be fooled. Let us not be worried in Trinidad and Tobago unnecessarily. The government is aware that the globe is moving more towards renewables, but we're also realistic. We are also realistic, and you're seeing firsthand, this is not hypothetical, the effects of a complete reliance too early on renewables. There must be a fallback position. Right now, that continues to be gas. Trinidad and Tobago has nothing to fear with respect to our oil and gas energy sector for the foreseeable decades. So anybody who tries to peddle a story otherwise is nothing but a fearmonger. And you can see live examples currently why this is not going to happen overnight. We're seeing the markets in Europe as COVID has dispensed, and they need increased production. Right now, everybody's predicting colder winter, and all over the world, there's a rush for gas. You're seeing the oil prices increase as well, and this is because the world is not as yet at the position where we can depend completely on renewables, or even in the majority on renewables. So the message, Madam President, to Trinidad and Tobago is that our oil and gas sector is here to stay in the next few decades. And, as I'm about to say, the government has been working assiduously to secure it and to derive maximum benefit for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And I take this opportunity, Madam President, through you to remind our population, our citizens, that the energy sector is a global one. It's global in nature. So what happens with global commodity prices determines what happens here in Trinidad and Tobago. And this is an important point for the psyche of our people to understand. I think the vast majority of sensible people do, but every time there's a dip downwards in a global commodity pricing, people like to try and disturb our psyche and put us in a sense of panic that the sky is falling. Once you understand that in an energy setting, commodity prices are set globally, you then know what to monitor and you know how to deal with it. Unfortunately, Madam President, we have a number of persons who interfere with that national psyche and always trying to paint Trinidad and Tobago in a negative light. They write regularly in the newspapers, articles and columns. But through you and the Senate here today, Madam President, I put the country on notice. In reality, these persons are doing nothing more